Well, hello and welcome back. Today's episode of Mind, Mood and Food. Are you familiar with your shadow side?
Ooh.
I know,
The correct time of year we've just been saying when this is going to be going out to sound a little bit mysterious and spooky.
absolutely. And I think this one, as I said to you earlier, Adele, I don't know very much about the shadow side or what it's about really. But yeah, absolutely perfect time of the year that we're going into, the likes of Halloween, to find out a bit more of what is exactly a shadow side. Can you help
Mm,
me out?
I can. I love it. It's good. You will love it. Well, it can be a little bit scary and a little bit daunting to start lifting the lid and looking at this because the reason it's called a shadow side is that we've pushed it down, we've buried it down, and we don't want to admit that we've got these bits of ourselves because they're negative or we see them or perceive them as negative for some reason. I was trying to remember the name of the book because I love my books and I'm always diving in and out of them and I love Audible books. I think it's something called something like The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, something like that. Really good book about shadow, but also there's lots of information out there with lots of other books as well. But obviously, as we always say in our podcast, we're only here for 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes. So it's just a bit of a light touch and an introduction, and it's there to spark your curiosity and hopefully for you and for everyone listening to go off and have a little play with it. And if nothing else, I think having an awareness of it, as with everything I teach, awareness comes first, and that is completely game changing. So there's benefits to having an idea of your shadow side and just an awareness and an understanding of it. And there's benefits to actually like trying to do a little bit of shadow work to kind of peel back those layers a little bit and just to at least admit and accept that that shadow is there. And there's few really good ways to do it. One is my favorite because it's what I always work with clients, and it's just helpful for everyday life, for when things irritate you and trigger you to be much more helpful for you in dealing with that rather than like blowing up with people. You know, we've talked about the communication before, this non-violent communication, I think, on a previous podcast. So it can go like along with that to help you to do some self-study on yourself, which is part of yoga, Svadhyaya, self-study, one of the yamas and niyamas, and also to have that loving kindness towards others. So it fits really well with that ahimsa element of yoga as well. So I've got my notes on this screen, so I might just be having a little look over here to do some like good information and quotes that I've collected that might help. And the idea of the shadow self was popularized um, by a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst called Carl Jung. So most people have heard of Jung.
Yeah.
The psychiatrist is a very, very clever man. Um, and it's composed of the parts of yourself that you reject. So that's why we call it the shadow side. It's not in the light, so we don't want to look at it. Of course, what parts of yourself do you want to look at and do you want to go, yay, I'm like, amazing, I'm organized, I'm disciplined, I'm not lazy, I'm this, that, and the other. We kind of want to like shine the light on those, we want to shout about those. But when it's something like if you have got the capacity or the potentiality to be a bit lazy or procrastinate or that kind of thing, we don't tend to like to go there and shine the light on that. Of course, there are some people that are a lot more self-deprecating and kind of go, oh yeah, I'm rubbish at this and I'm rubbish at that. So we're not really talking about that quite so much. Too much focus on shadow side. As with everything, it's balance. So if you're like swallowing around in self-pity and bathing in your shadow but
Yeah.
not actually using it to be any constructive, to improve, to change, to shift, be aware of that. Maybe you need to kind of bring yourself into the light a little bit. But I think for a lot of us, we push that down and we want to kind of look at our good side. And what we tend to find then is we're not aware of our shadow side. We're completely not aware of it, and we don't like to own it. And in this book, she talked about this like big mansion castle type thing, and it was really nice analogy of all the lovely rooms upstairs with the light and everything shining through. And there are some rooms in your castle that are like unexplored. They've been left alone for a long time, and they're full of dark, dingy corners and cobwebs and things. And it's like quite scary to go in there. You won't want to go in there because you're like, what the hell am I going to find if I go in that room? So
Mm.
we don't like to go, oh, yeah, maybe I have got the potentiality to be a really bossy cow or really angry or be a right lazy bitch. Excuse me, there's a bit of swearing going on today. Should have done a warning at the start. But this kind of like, oh, I don't want to admit to that.
You know what this is, and this might sound extremely nerdy, but this is what I'm getting so far. Put me right if I'm wrong. Sounds a bit like Star Wars, and what I mean by that is, yes, there is Luke there who is training to be a Jedi, and then there's all the Jedis who are basically there to see the Force, as it were, and then you've got the dark side.
Mm, Darth Vader.
Exactly.
But you
And
know, in Star Wars, and the same in the Wizard of Oz, actually, there's they are very, very yogic um, and spiritual films, and that is exactly what that all is about in terms of the light and the dark. So if you
yay!
kind of do some googling around that in terms of the spirituality of Star Wars,
Yeah,
of course, welcome to the dark side, and he finds that he's got that dark within him, and it's that fight, isn't it, between light and dark,
yeah,
and that good and evil and all that sort of thing. So yeah, we have all got darkness in us,
yeah.
but we don't like to admit it, and we don't like to look at it because it's not very nice. And what it does, it brings up a lot of shame and guilt, and those kind of negative feelings. And what you'll probably find if you play with this and look into it is, a lot of what you've pushed down is what was seen as unacceptable when you were a child. So if you are very opinionated and you like to speak your truth and you like to say it as it is and things like that, you probably get told to button it a bit because that's not
Mm.
socially acceptable. Nobody likes a gobby cow. So it's like, not, don't be like that. Be a bit quieter, be seen and not heard, like push it down, push it down.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
if
yeah,
you're brought up with, it's not nice to be angry because our parents obviously want us to be accepted socially. So as
yeah,
a parent myself, of course, if you see some behavior that you think it's not going to go down well if they do that at school, and even from 2 when they start the tantrums and stuff, you constantly are like trying to calm them down and to say, that's naughty, so we get told that's bad. That's
hmm
not acceptable. That's you do that, you're a good girl. You do that, you're a bad girl, and it's like you get punished or you get rewarded and all of that stuff.
yeah, absolutely.
So it's no wonder then that we learn how to be socially acceptable, and we actually change our personality to fit in. And so there might be there it is, not might be. There's all of the full spectrum of potentiality as humans. If you can see it in someone else, you've absolutely got that in yourself to be capable of doing that. And even to the degree, if you read the book that I just mentioned of quite extreme things, like she gives a really good example in the book actually about like a racist remark. And I'm like, oh, I can't believe she's actually been brave enough to put that in her book to say she's got the potentiality to have that within her. But we've all got the potentiality
Yeah,
to have all of this stuff within us. And what I can't remember the name of the author, I'll have to try and find it. What she's talking about in the benefits of doing this really is number one, so you as soon as you accept this part of you that you are locking away and refusing to admit is there, you will find that you get on better with those people that are triggering you. So she was like, she had this person in her group. She was doing this talk, whatever it was, healing practice or something, or coaching. So she was dealing with this lady, and she was just like, oh, she was not feeling it. She kept asking questions at the end, but really awkward questions. There was this kind of like butting of heads, and she's
passion.
like,
Yeah,
what is it about this woman, what is her problem? And she'd done this work, this shadow work. So she go, right, there's something in her that is triggering me that I'm not quite getting. And so this is what, came up. She realized that she felt that this lady was being racist towards her because she was white and the other lady was of color, but it was like she was like it was the remarks she was saying were feeling like that. And then so she had to admit that she had, not that she was a racist, but that she had that potential within her, and see that because what the other lady was triggering in her was acting as a mirror.
Mm.
And so because she accepted that, and she went home, she did some journaling, she did some work around it, and she was like absolutely mortified to realize that she perhaps had seen it in this way or she had this potential within herself. So she didn't talk to the lady about it. She didn't go, do you know what? I'm sorry if I've come across in this way. Or she didn't like discuss it. She just went through the realization process, went back to the meeting the next week and had this massive breakthrough with the lady who said, should I don't know what's different this week, but this just totally spoke to me and that, they were hugging and it was like this connection was there. And so it's kind of in the energy that she felt that shift
Mm.
because she'd accepted this part within her that she could see clearly being mirrored back. So, going back to that example of like being a really talky, loud person and then having that pushed out of you in a way when you're 5 or 6 or whatever, she then said, so if you do this work and you might start to see that other people that are loud and very opinionated and strong really get on your nerves, and you might be like, oh my God, I wish they'd shut up. Why are they so opinionated? Why are they not letting me get a word in? Blah, blah, blah. And that's because you've got that within you and you were like that, but then you got it kind of shushed out of you. So you find that really triggering.
That does sound quite familiar.
Yay.
Because I know when I was a kid, um, probably around about the age of 3 or 4, I did. My mum often said you could hear me before you saw her. So this, and when I do try and say, try and get opinions heard, it can be sometimes quite difficult with different people. So I'm completely getting this and understanding,
Mm,
well, actually, there is a gobby cow within me.
that has been silenced or
Yeah,
suppressed.
exactly. Yeah.
And the same with me. Like I absolutely have that within me. And I found one of the biggest things for me is that I find it really difficult, especially if I'm working with people that's more than one-on-one. If you're in a group of, I mean, just if you're in a group of friends, even if I start to speak, it gets kind of overshadowed or shushed, or people don't hear me, and it's like, what's going on? So there's a lot of work still for me to do in that way, but that's understanding that you are them and they are you, and they're just doing what you're capable of doing. And it's like, and what you might find then is it doesn't happen as much and it changes. And because the universe is just showing us what we need to learn.
Yeah. Speak up a bit more.
Yeah, and don't be don't be ashamed of that gobby cow that's within you.
Yeah.
Like it's about accepting them. It's not necessarily like, oh, I now want to turn into that gobby cow, because it's like you could do this with anything, you could do this with um the fact that you've got a really angry, like raging person inside of you. And again, we will suppress that, we'll keep it down because it's not acceptable. Doesn't mean you want to turn into that, because
No.
that you wouldn't want to live like that, would you? But if you see that in someone else, or you see, a homeless person, and sometimes people are like, oh, well, they're just lazy and they should get a job. And I'm not lazy, I'm really disciplined to get up at 5 a.m., do my run, do this, that. But we've got that within us, and there but for the grace of God and for different circumstances, but people say, no, that would never happen to me, because people are probably listening to this now thinking that's not true, this would never happen to me. And if you are thinking that, I challenge you to just, because if you're so solid that this would never be you and you've not got this within you, what you probably find is those the people that give you that most emotional charge. So just, one of the tools for working with your shadow side, if you think, well, how am I going to do this? How do I start? How do I uncover it? Is to like find somebody that particularly irritates you a lot. Start with close
Okay.
people, family members, friends. Those people that give you those triggers, watch out for people that give you that highest emotional charge. And then, what is it about that person that you don't like? Write it down. Can you see that you've got that within you? Can you see that you either got some of those same traits that you actually do exhibit sometimes, or that you've pushed them down? You have the potential to be like that, but you're just not looking at them and not owning them and not accepting them. Um, what is it that makes you feel that emotion light up? Irritability, anger, sadness, what is it about that person that is
Triggering
hitting
you.
your
Yeah.
stuff? That's what Michael Singer called it. It's hitting our
Hitting
stuff.
your stuff. Oh God. I could definitely think of a few. They will remain nameless.
Yes, they might listen.
Yes. Wow. That's really quite insightful. And
Mm,
to understand that them triggering you is the fact that that's been more than likely buried deep. Also just needs a little bit of uncovering and what is actually going on here.
because it's helpful, like I say, it's helpful for you to own up to that because it helps psychologically for us to see that we've got the potential to be anything.
Yeah.
We're all the same, we're all humans. So if another person can do something that you find terrible, even like littering, you think, oh, I would never. I'm so annoyed when I see somebody littering. I'm like, what gives them the right? But there might be a time that you've done it in the past
Yeah.
or a version of it
Mm.
where you've been, can't be bothered. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
leave it here. Like it's very judgmental, isn't it? Where we
Very.
go around finding ourselves being really angry about things. And I think then if you can anytime, it's just I always teach my clients to like have this lightness and playful energy. Anytime you get triggered is an opportunity. And even that can change your life because it can stop you from just being, again, reactive
Mm.
to what's going on around you and to actually take responsibility, to take ownership and to just do some bloody work around it and to see that it's always in you, it's not the external circumstance, which is what I always teach. But one of the things to remind people of is to be kind. So it's really important to be kind to yourself when you're doing this work because it's not nice to kind of own up to some of this stuff. So it could bring up all these awful feelings that have been pushed down. So if you do feel the need to like work with somebody, it can be very helpful to work with a coach or a therapist because also we can see as a coach
Mm.
things in other people, even when they're just chatting away. It'll be really obvious to a third party, whereas it might take you a long, long time to try and figure it out for yourself. So working with someone else is always useful. Or doing practices like journaling, meditation, journaling, writing things down, just exploring. If you feel triggered by somebody, just exploring that in a little bit of journaling is a useful tool. We write down a lot differently than we think and differently than we speak. So doing a little bit of kind of free writing. But what's this quote from Jung I wrote down? Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves.
Oh, spot on when it comes to driving. Absolutely.
Yeah, why are we also, everyone's the most perfect driver, never does
Yeah.
anything wrong. I'm just coming back from my class and there was a young boy, he probably doesn't have any kind of license because he was on this kind of crosser bike thing. He only looks about 16 with a bandana on and he's chucking down. And I thought, I just had a sense that he was going to pull out on me
Yeah.
because it's always worth, if you're not sure, just being careful, isn't it? And then he starts
Absolutely.
moving into the middle of the road and I was just like, whoa, swerving around him. But if I'd not paid attention and been going too fast, it could have been very different. So then you're like, blah, 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 in your head. Like, what an idiot. But again, it's not easy to do this in the moment either. So just a final point, it might be worth doing maybe at the end of the day, if you do a little journal practice or a diary or you do a meditation practice, sometimes it's like reflect back on your day, because
Yeah.
in that moment you're like, oh, I'm the best driver ever and they're just such an idiot. But it's like, how many times have I pulled out because I've not been thinking straight or done something wrong? We're not perfect.
No, no one is. Thank God. That was really, really insightful. I really enjoyed that one, and I'm definitely going to be looking more into the dark side.
Look into the dark side. So happy Halloween, everyone. I think this is going out around Halloween time. So it's a really good time. We're getting into that really dark time of the year, aren't we, with the playing with the shadows.
Yeah, and understanding your own shadow, I think would be very, very helpful.
Hmm.
So, if you have enjoyed this episode, please let us know. Give us a like if you can. Let us know if you're starting to look at your shadow side and what you found. Comments would be very grateful
They
around that.
would. I was speaking to someone again the other day who said, oh, yeah, I was listening to your podcast the other day. And I went, were you? And I was like, how bad's that I was so surprised that someone's listening to our podcast? Because it's like that, don't you just keep doing it, but not sure
Yeah,
if anyone's listening because we don't get many comments and things. So if you are listening, she was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to start doing a little comment. I went, I really would appreciate it.
definitely. The more comments, the better, please.
Thank you. Even just great episode, anything, we'd love it.
Oh, yeah, anything at all. So, thank you, Adele.
Thank you.
And see you next time.
See you on the next one. Bye, guys.